All right, today we're sharing an inspiring story of an entrepreneur who decided to become a mom by choice. I'll share her story in a second. Her name is Yuko Tsuchida, and I'll tell you more about her when we come back after the break.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show, and every week we have smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. And if you check out the archives, we've got great episodes with companies and organizations like Netflix and Grubhub and Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard. Lots of great episodes for you to check out. And of course, before we get into this episode is brought to you by Rise 25, where we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you to run your podcast. We're the easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. And we do three things: strategy, accountability, and full execution on the production side. In fact, we've invented what some are calling the Wix of B2B podcasting. It's our platform, Podcast Copilot. So if you want to learn more about this, we'd love to tell you more about it. You can go to our website at rise25.com or email our team at support@rise25.com. All right, a quick thank you and a shout out for Paul Brezenden of 454 Creative. He is a past guest on this show, and I always like to ask my past guests, who else do they know that would make a remarkable guest who has a story to tell? And he said, you got to talk to Yuko. And Yuko is a CPA by training and founder of Hito LLC. It's a tax consulting firm based out of beautiful Newport Beach, California, just south of me. I'm up in the Bay Area. And she has 15 years of experience in tax consulting. She helps clients, including Fortune 500 companies, how to save millions of dollars in tax incentives and credits. So very niche specific types of business. So I love to talk to business owners like that don't create this kind of generic business, but get very specific about the kind of business that they created. So we'll talk about that. But she has an interesting background, was born and raised in Japan. And as I alluded to earlier, decided to become a solo mom by choice. So I'm definitely going to want to get into that and hear about her son, who is Kazuki, in a moment or two. But Yuko, before we get into that, such a pleasure to have you here today. And as I mentioned, you were born in Japan and you grew up with your father had a painting company. Your father is now actually visiting you, coincidentally, right now. Had a painting company, and you, like many children of entrepreneurs, children of business owners, were put to work on the weekend. So tell me a little bit about that, what you had to do for the family business.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so super excited. So my father came from my father and my mother came from very modest background, and he became painting company CEO. In the heydays, I think he had 30, 40 workers, and because of their humbling, background, they always told us, hard work. So whenever we were little, we had to, clean their work cars or, work vehicle, on a weekend, and they will give me, $1. And now I think about it, that was very, small amount. I should have negotiated a little bit more to whenever I was in California, not California, I went to Oklahoma for my undergrad. I actually, cleans people's houses because I couldn't legally work back then.
And how old were you when you were cleaning the cars for your dad's company?
I will say 6 or 7.
Wow, put you to work early.
Yeah, and on a weekend, I think they volunteered for us to go get recycling from the neighborhood.
Wow. Okay, really putting you to work.
Yeah.
And, sometimes that happens, and I interview people on this show that grow up a little bit resentful or they run the opposite direction. Some people that teaches them the value of $1 and they decide, I really want to be like my parent. I want to own my own destiny. I want to own my own business. What kind of an impact did that have on you in your early years, say in college or so? Did you see yourself as owning your own company one day like your father?
I didn't really think about owning my company. My parents being construction company, it was always rocky, right? Whenever economic downtime, their company or their industry was hit first. And I don't know, like, you remember this, but back in like, 1990s, like back in Japan, like, bubble bursted and like, he or like we saw a lot of businesses, small businesses like go under. And now I talked to like, my father about it. And like, told me like, probably 80% of his friends' company went under. And like,
Wow.
he helped like, some of them like he helped like maintain like their family together or like how to get out the debt. So he him and like my mom like always said like just don't go into business yourself. It's
Yeah.
hard, it's mentally hard, like it's really physically hard. So I never thought about like going into like business myself, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And you, so you're born and raised in Japan. You come to the US for college. You come to Tahlequah, Oklahoma, not a city I've heard of. How did you end up going from Japan all the way over to the heart of the US, Oklahoma? And what was that experience like?
Yeah, so I had like, my mother and like my father like, got like kind of coordinator back in Japan, like, because we didn't have that much like money to come and like tour all the colleges. So they said like, hey, here's our criteria, financial criteria, and like, you give them your criteria, what you're looking for, and find the like college you want to go to. So this coordinator was like, oh my God, if you want to like, real true American experience, here's a college for you. So that was in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And
Northeastern State University in Tahlequah, Oklahoma.
yes.
That's what they
So
recommended to you.
yes. And whenever I was like, in my mind, all US were like, Beverly Hills 90210. So whenever I landed Oklahoma, I was culture shocked. Like
Yeah.
I grew up in like second biggest city in Japan. So from there to like, middle of nowhere, like,
I would
probably
be culture shocked moving there. And I would have been from high school in Los Angeles, like moving to Oklahoma. So I can't imagine what it was like for you.
yeah, it was a culture shock. But hindsight, like, the Southern hospitality, like, everybody was so nice. They took me under the wing. So, like, any holidays of whatsoever, like, I had places to go. So now I think it back, like, the reason I'm here today is probably because, like, I went to school in Oklahoma.
Wow. Were there a lot of other Japanese people on campus?
Yes, about like 50 Japanese students. We are the first year to come from Japan. So
Okay.
they had like some like, international students, but Japanese student, we were the first one. And I think it was like 20 people in my
Wow.
class.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So I moved around a bit as a kid, but I didn't move from country to country like you did. I moved from coast to coast. So I was born in Washington, D.C., moved to Southern California, big culture change between those two, moved to suburban Massachusetts. Again, big culture change back to Southern California. Very different parts of the country, nowhere on a par of what you experienced. But I do think that it made me more open, especially when I got to college, to new experiences. I imagine that there must have been something that did the same thing for you because you then later in your career, actually, you ended up moving to Spain and even to South Africa at some point. So it sounds like there was probably a bit of an openness, a willingness to have those international experiences after that.
Yeah, I think like whenever I moved to Oklahoma, I don't know like I had that. However, like, moving to Oklahoma, like I witnessed like, people are people, but like so different culturally, right? And how we were able to connect in a deeper level that made me like more curious about different parts of the world. So I moved to like, LA for my work. And then the reason I wanted to go to like South Africa or like Madrid was like I wanted to see the world and like, how people are different or how people are the same. And it's being like, amazing to like, create the friends around the world.
So you moved to Los Angeles after college. So it made you a little closer to Beverly Hills
Yes.
90210. What was that experience like?
It was great. Like, my LA life was all about Big Four accounting firm. Like, I worked in KPMG. So
So a lot of working, a lot
7
of
a.m. to like,
hours.
12
Yeah.
midnight, I was in the
Yeah.
office, but I learned so much in that 2, 3 years I was there.
And you end up going and getting your MBA. Well, first you started a CPA firm. focused on tax credits and incentives, and then you went through a tough partnership breakup. Talk to me a little bit about what you learned from that experience and what you took from that experience that you would maybe advise others on to think about before going into a partnership.
Yeah. So whenever I went to partnership with him, he was my fiance at the time, and he was much more senior, and we had a great relationship, and along the way, we decided we are better, being a business partner than romantic partner. And then after 4 or 5 years after our breakup, we are still really good friends. And I think still highly of him. But we never talked about how we wanted to grow the firm or what culture or what core value, two of us have. And after 7 years, it was evident that how he wanted to grow the farm to what I wanted from the farm, right?
Hmm.
So the fundamental was not there, and we just never talked about it. So I always say to my friends who are thinking about going to partnership, having that hard conversation first, what is your core value? What do you want to get out from the work? And is this lifestyle business or is this you do you want to grow? If you want to grow, how fast you want to grow? And those are such a critical discussion, which I didn't know at the time. Whenever I started my company, I was still in the early 20s and I didn't know. But now I look back, that was something we missed.
Yeah. I mean, that just the fact that you had a romantic relationship and a business relationship, broke off the romantic relationship and continued for 4 or 5 years in the professional relationship, business partnership, that's got to be unusual. You don't hear that type of story very often.
Yeah, I think for us it worked because we are very good at compartmentalizing our life, and I think we have such a mutual respect in the workplace. I still talk to him whenever I have some struggle, and he recently called me and asked for my hey, how would you do that or whatnot. So I think fundamentally we have high level respect to each other comes
Yeah.
to work.
So you go off, you get your MBA in Madrid, Spain, and then that took you then later to a consulting project in South Africa. So at this point, you've basically worked all over the globe. Talk a little bit about those experiences working in Spain and then South Africa.
Yeah, Spain. I went to business school called IE Business School. It was fabulous. Experience. If anybody's looking for executive an MBA, which can be done in a year, I will highly recommend it. The people are from all over the world, in Latin America to Saudi Arabia. One of the classmates was Prince of Saudi Arabia. So the people we met was just I would meet in America or Japan, right? So that was fantastic. And it took me to South Africa where I did the nonprofit consulting work, and which was it came from my curiosity again, right? How is appetite affected people in South Africa, and how does that still live out? And it was fulfilling for me, soul fulfilling to go and serve the people there and help out. One of the things I had discussion with my classmates, father who is from South Africa was whenever we met over coffee or happy hours, and I am Japanese, my colleague was Chinese. And he asked us, where we are from. And, we just said, hey, we are from, China and, Japan. And that changed our, tone of the voice from him. And I said, hey, why are you talking to her that way? And he didn't realize, right? I was, just curious, why he changed how he was talking to her. And he said, although I don't, I don't want to, and I don't realize it. I still I was born and raised in Apathy. And whenever as he's still talking to people like us, right? Like, there's always class system
Hmm.
because Japan was like, white collar in apathy and Chinese was like colored people.
Mm.
So it was very, very interesting to see
For
those
South
like,
Africans, that's how they
yeah.
viewed Japanese and
Hmm.
Chinese. So
So
he was more respectful to you and less
yeah.
respectful to your friend who was Chinese.
Correct. So
Wow,
that was
interesting.
very interesting. And like, it was such a great like conversation like that, like happened all over the place
Hmm.
because like I was curious and like uh probably naive enough to ask those questions to people.
Yeah. You mentioned a moment ago of the prince from Saudi Arabia was in your MBA class. What was that
Yes,
like
why
for
not?
you? You grew up, helping to clean your parents' cars for your dad's painting business, and you're in class with a prince. I can't imagine what that was like.
Yeah, it was I don't know like how to describe it, but like, it was just like amazing to see like how other people live. Like,
Uh,
they're popping like, Dom Perignon like every single night at the club.
oh,
And like we were
jeez.
like, wow. Even I had a business and I exited from business. Like I won't like, do that every night.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, another level.
Yeah.
So you come back to the US and then you form this business, Hito LLC, which has a very specific focus, specialized on tax credits. Now you decided to not do something that was generic, that was, helping businesses or their tax returns or something like that. Talk to me a little bit about the decision process that went into forming that specific business with that specific focus.
Yeah, so KPMG to like, previous firm, like, I went from tax preparer to like, more focusing like tax credit, tax incentive work. And I just love like tax credit, tax incentive work because like, I can actually see how I'm helping clients, right? Whenever like, I was preparing tax return, like, I was just a cost to them. And like, looking at their type of like activities and like identify opportunity like clients are like very gracious towards us so and like there is not that many people or firms specialize in this area so I wanted to create the firm which focused on tax credit tax incentive and like really serving the small to mid-size like companies where they typically do not have access to big four accounting firm.
Mm. And it's interesting because, you work for these KPMG is one of the largest accounting firms in the world. You decided to start something that is kind of like would be doing similar types of work. Did you find that it was hard to get clients early on? Because KPMG has a long history, has an international reputation, oftentimes targeting similar types of clients, or did you target smaller companies that were easier to get as a client?
Yeah, I targeted like, much smaller company, like, startup companies like at the beginning and like, as our business like, season, like, our clients are seasoned as well. And like, now we see more and more like competition with like big four accounting firm. But I think what our differentiator now is like, we're really hands-on with our clients and like, really listening to like, what they say and like, try to integrate us into like their accounting or like, C-level executives. So like we can identify like, future opportunity, not just look back opportunities.
And did you find did anything like did COVID change the attitude towards clients and whereas a lot of businesses say that before COVID companies expected to hire law firms and accounting firms that had primo offices and the primo, skyscrapers and best addresses and things like that. And then eventually companies were more open to working with smaller companies and companies that weren't located in, the biggest, tallest skyscraper out there or didn't have the biggest name. Did you notice a difference after COVID?
I'm not sure about that because like, majority of my clients come from like, word to mouth referrals. So even like first clients, like, I like my old client actually called me and like, hired me. So, my firm like grew from there. So like, we typically don't do like, cold outreach until like, recently. So um yeah, I can't say either one way or another.
Yeah. Talk about that cold outreach for a firm, for a, a tax strategy firm seems kind of cutting edge. So, did it take, now I know I interviewed Paul before, who's an advocate of doing cold outreach. So maybe he helped you baby step into it, but did it take a while for you to warm up to the idea of, doing cold outreach?
Yeah, definitely. Like, we didn't want to view it as like, we are selling like, product, right?
Yeah.
We are like, I think we are professional service. So like whenever even like, we say like cold outreach, like typically we call like, CPA firm who doesn't specialize in this area, right? Because
So
whenever they
referral
can like,
partners.
yeah, they can
Yeah.
like, influence like their clients and
Yeah.
like if we can like bring like like additional skill set like that might be beneficial for like both of them.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's get to talking about Kazuki. Kazuki is your son. At
Yes.
what point did you decide that you wanted to become, in your words, a solo mom by choice?
My journey actually started like whenever I was 34 and originally I was thinking about like adopting kid and that's what I wanted to do if I didn't have a partner, but no, I'm not an American citizen, so it was very, very difficult.
Mm.
So,
It's harder to adopt if you're not an American citizen
yeah.
and living in the United States. Interesting. What was
So
the reason
I
for that? That the adoption agencies don't want to place with a non-citizen out of
I
fear
think
that,
like non-citizen, no single mother, that was like more risky, right?
oh
So I
yeah.
think like I had two double negative.
Mm, mm,
So it was very hard. And like after that, I looked into like, foster parents too. And like, it was difficult too. Like it was gonna take like longer. One of my friend like introduced me to like, her colleague who had her son or her daughter through sperm donor. So I got to talk to her and like, um, around the time, like, I talked to her, like, I was start to make decision, like, hey, this might be like, best way for me to go about having a kid.
and so, and you said you were 34 at the time
34,
you started looking into it. Yeah.
but it took me about 2 years to like, get to the point, like, adoption was like a little bit like difficult and
Yeah.
like, another couple years. And um, I got Kazuki, he was born like on my, like close to my 40th birthday.
Okay. So it took a while to get to that point
Yeah.
then. That's 6 years.
Yes.
Um, I want to know what was the reaction of family, friends, people that you told that you were gonna go have a baby on your
So,
own?
yeah, my family was actually very supportive, which was surprising to me. They live in Japan, which is very traditional, like, culture. And like, I do not think like, what I did is like, common, right?
Were
Or
you
they haven't
nervous?
heard.
Were you
um,
nervous to tell them?
Oh, super. Like I went to like couple therapy session and like I talk it out. So it was very difficult, but like my father was like, ecstatic and like, my godmother was like, on board as well. And majority of my friends were very, very supportive. There were a few who were like, are you crazy? Like, who are you to have kids? Like, bring the kids like into this world without like, father. So there was a couple like hurtful comments.
Mm.
However, like I think like majority of my friends and family were very, very supportive.
And so you use a sperm donor, and you get pregnant.
Hmm.
Um, and what was the pregnancy like?
Pregnancy was easy. I was like, running. I used to do Orange Theory and like, I was running till like 8 month pregnant.
Uh-huh.
Last 4 weeks was like a little bit heavy and like tough, but it was super easy. And like it was very happy moments.
And did you have to get the company ready for you to take a break, take some time away?
Yeah, so I started like planning about 2 years ahead to like say, okay, if I were to take maternity leave, like what does it look like? And I had to, of course, like replace me at the
Yeah.
moment. I was the head of like technical head, so I actually hired somebody who kind of like, interim like took over the company. I actually had to cut my maternity leave short because I found that like he was doing something shady. So,
Oh,
although like, we did like a lot of interview and like, a lot of due diligence, it was unfortunate, but, the rest of the company was like, pretty stable and like they were the one like, brought up like issues and like I was able to like quickly come back and like, fix the issue and let him
hmm.
go.
I think back, so that must have been just so difficult to deal with that while you're having your baby and everything. But yeah, I wanted to ask you about like just the birth process and everything because, I think back and I have 4 kids now, and I have said this to other people that if I knew what I knew, if I knew how much I love my kids, each of them individually, that if I were in your shoes, if I had not found a partner, I would make the same choice. It's hard to say, that I would have that courage, if it push came to shove. But if you were able to feel the love that you feel for your kids, I like to think that I would make that decision. Now, I can't imagine how hard it is, how much harder it is without a partner, especially considering like every step of the way, you must have faced doctors and things like that who are like, "Oh, where's the dad?" or stuff like that. Did you have awkward moments like that going through the process, or in the delivery room, or with checkup appointments and things like that?
Yeah, doctors and stuff are like, I was very, very open from the get-go. So like, I didn't face that. However, like, whenever people like look at me like pregnant and like they're like, oh, where's like your husband? Even
Mm.
now, right? Like whenever I go to soccer class for Kazuki, everybody's like, where's your dad? Like, and
Mm.
like how to address that is like, a little bit difficult because he doesn't understand yet. And like,
Yeah.
their kids doesn't understand. And like, how I gonna like bring up the issue that's like, I need to still work on.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard people say that, you just surround them with love and let them know that
Hmm.
I brought you into this world because I loved you more than anything. Or my kids,
Yeah.
we've read children's books and things like that that talk about like, foster or adoption or, things like that. And it seems like those are kind of the ways that they address those sorts of issues.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so talk to me a little bit about after he's born. So he's born, and then you take maternity leave, and you have to come back in because you have to terminate this person who didn't work out. And then he's 2 now. You're in terrible twos. So it's been
Yes.
nothing but a breeze since then, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, until like he was walking, like he was angel. And like after he start walking, like, he's being like a
Forget
little
it, mom.
monster. But I have like, incredible support, although like I don't ha have a family here in US, like, my friends are family and like, they will always watch out for him. So that side, like, I being like really like pleased and like lucky to have like my friends and like his nanny and like his daycare teachers. As far as business goes, like just looking back this 2 years, like the I feel like I'm still figuring out how to balance motherhood and then like my business. And I will admit that like I feel like last 2 years like my business got hit because I'm not present 100% of the time. I feel like now, like, we have a really good team and like, they can take it to like next level. However, like, I still need to be here and like I need to still like, lead the company. So right now my focus is how to like, develop next leaders
Yeah.
and really take this company to next level with me and like, without me, right?
Yeah.
Day to day.
Yeah. That's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
And you decided to share your story publicly from founder to family is a website that the platform that you set up to share your story. What motivated that?
So I like, one of the reasons I wanted to share was like, somebody helped me and I wanted to give back. And like, whenever I think about giving back, like I was like thinking, oh, I want to fly to like South Africa or like Cambodia to do like volunteer work. But with Kazuki, it's like a little bit difficult right now. So
Yeah,
whenever I was
very
thinking
difficult.
about
Yeah.
thinking about like, how to give back, maybe like, telling my story may help somebody to make that decision, or I can talk them through what I went through. So that's why I started that blog, and hopefully somebody's reading it and making the decision for themselves.
Have you had people reach out yet?
Not yet. But
hopefully
I have
after
given,
this podcast goes
yeah.
live. Yeah, someone will reach out and say, thank you for sharing your story. And I have a question, something like that. Yeah, that's great, because that's just putting goodwill out into the world. And that's really exciting. And I'm sure that Kazuki is going to be a man of the world, considering your background from Japan to Oklahoma to Los Angeles to Spain to South Africa to back to Southern California. That's going to be one international kid.
Yes, he been traveling to Japan a couple times now,
Wow.
and he gonna go to Costa Rica and Hawaii. So
wow.
He'll be world traveler by 3.
That's really impressive. Considering my 9-year-old a few days ago said to me, Dad, I don't think I've ever been on an airplane. Not true. He's been on an airplane. He just doesn't go very often. It was long ago, so I guess he doesn't remember. Well, Yuko, this was such a cool story. Thank you for sharing your story. Where can people go to learn more about you and connect with you if they have any questions?
Sure.
Either on the tax side or on the personal side.
Yeah, you can email us info@hitollc.com. So it's HITOLLC.com. And you'll get that to me.
And from foundertofamily.com, is that the website?
Yes.
From
foundertofamily.com.
Okay.
And there's a link to my email.
Awesome. So. Yuko, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.